The chapel door hung crooked on its hinges when Benjamin Jameson returned from checking his cattle that September morning in 1872. And something deep in his gut told him that after 3 years of complete solitude on his Wyoming ranch, his world was about to change forever. He dismounted slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward the rifle secured to his saddle. The early autumn wind carried the scent of dust and sagebrush across his property, which stretched for thousands of acres in every direction from the main house. The chapel, a small structure his late wife had insisted on building before the fever took her, stood 50 yards from the main ranch house. He had not stepped inside it since the day they buried her. The door creaked as he pushed it open, flooding the dim interior with morning light. There, collapsed on the wooden floor before the simple altar, lay a woman. Her dress was torn and filthy, her dark hair matted with dirt and sweat. Her lips moved soundlessly, and he realized she was praying, though no words came out. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Benjamin crossed the small space in 3 strides and knelt beside her. Up close, he could see she was younger than he had first thought, perhaps 24 or 25. Her face was gaunt with hunger, her skin burned dark by the sun. When he touched her shoulder gently, her eyes flew open, revealing pupils dilated with fear and exhaustion. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please do not send me back." "Back where?" Benjamin asked, keeping his voice low and steady as he would with a frightened horse. "Missouri." The word came out like a confession, and then her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Benjamin carried her to the main house, surprised by how little she weighed. He laid her on the guest bed, the first person to occupy it since his sister had visited 2 years prior. He fetched water from the well and carefully dripped it between her cracked lips. She swallowed reflexively but did not wake. For the next 2 days, Benjamin tended to her as he would a sick calf. He managed to get broth into her, changed the cool cloths on her forehead when fever set in, and waited. On the 3rd morning, her eyes opened clear and focused. "Where am I?" she asked, looking around the simple room with its whitewashed walls and plain furniture. "My ranch." About 15 miles north of Cheyenne, Wyoming territory. He sat in the chair he had pulled up beside the bed, a bowl of soup in his hands. "You have been unconscious for 2 days. Can you eat?" She pushed herself up slowly, wincing at the movement. "I can try." He watched as she took the bowl with trembling hands and began to eat, slowly at first, then with increasing hunger. She finished the entire bowl before speaking again. "My name is Beatrice Paulson," she said, meeting his eyes for the first time. They were hazel, he noticed, flecked with gold. "I walked here from Missouri, St. Louis to be precise." Benjamin did the calculation in his head. "That is over 500 miles, 563 as best I can figure." She handed him back the bowl. "I did not walk it all at once. I worked when I could, begged when I had to, stole when there was no other choice. It took me 4 months. What were you running from?" Her jaw tightened. "Not what? Who?" She looked down at her hands and he saw the fading yellow of old bruises on her wrists. "My husband." Former husband, though he would not see it that way. Benjamin stood and walked to the window, looking out over his land. "The law does not look kindly on wives who leave their husbands." "I know." Her voice was steady now, despite the fear he could hear beneath it. "But the law did not look kindly on me when I went to them with broken ribs and a black eye either. They told me I must have done something to provoke him, that a man has a right to discipline his wife as he sees fit." He turned back to face her. "How did you end up in my chapel?" "I saw it from the road. I have been walking mostly at night the past few weeks since I crossed into Wyoming territory. I thought it was abandoned. I just needed somewhere to rest, somewhere to pray for guidance. I did not know anyone still lived here. She looked at him directly. I can leave if you want me to. I will not bring my troubles to your door. Benjamin considered her for a long moment. He was 32 years old, and he had been alone on this ranch since Sarah died. He employed 2 ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse and kept mostly to themselves. He went to town once a month for supplies. He spoke to his cattle more than he spoke to people. The loneliness had become such a part of him that he barely noticed it anymore, like an old scar that only ached in cold weather. You can stay, he said. At least until you are strong enough to decide what you want to do next. Relief flooded her face, followed quickly by wariness. I cannot pay you. I did not ask you to. He moved toward the door. Rest today. Tomorrow, if you are feeling well enough, you can help around the house if you want to earn your keep. I am not much of a cook, and this place could use a woman's touch. Mr. Jameson, she called as he reached the door. He turned. Thank you. You are a good man. He nodded and left before she could see how much those simple words affected him. It had been a long time since anyone had called him good. That evening, Benjamin sat on his porch and watched the sun set over the mountains in the distance. His ranch, the Broken Jay, sprawled across some of the best grazing land in Wyoming territory. He had built it up from nothing over the past 8 years, first with Sarah by his side, then alone after she passed. He ran 500 head of cattle, had good water sources, and was generally left alone by rustlers and trouble. The door opened behind him, and he heard Beatrice's unsteady footsteps. She emerged wrapped in one of Sarah's old shawls, which he had left on the chair in the guest room. She looked better already, her face less gaunt, though she still moved like someone whose body had been pushed far beyond its limits. You should be resting, he said, but he did not sound angry. I have been resting for 2 days. She lowered herself carefully into the other chair on the porch. Besides, that sunset is too beautiful to miss. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn gold and pink and purple. Finally, she spoke again. This ranch. You built it yourself, mostly. My wife and I came out here in 1864. We were married in St. Louis, actually, then came west to make our fortune. He smiled slightly at the memory. Sarah was braver than I was. She never complained, not even when we spent the first winter in a dugout because I had not finished building the house yet. What happened to her? Scarlet fever, 3 years ago this past June. He looked down at his hands. The doctor came from Cheyenne, but by the time he arrived, she was already gone. She was only 26. I am sorry, Beatrice said softly. That must have been terrible. It was. He stood abruptly. I will check on the horses. There is leftover stew on the stove if you are hungry again. He walked away before she could respond, angry at himself for sharing so much. He had not talked about Sarah with anyone in 3 years. Something about this woman made him want to open up, and that terrified him. The next morning, Benjamin woke to the smell of coffee and biscuits. He dressed quickly and came into the kitchen to find Beatrice standing at the stove, her hair braided back from her face. She had changed into one of Sarah's old dresses, which fit her reasonably well, though it hung a bit loose on her thin frame. You did not have to do this, he said, but he was already reaching for a cup of coffee. You are letting me stay. This is the least I can do. She placed a plate of biscuits on the table, along with butter and jam. Besides, I like to cook. It gives me something to do besides think. They ate breakfast together, and Benjamin found himself studying her face in the morning light. She was pretty, he realized, though her beauty was worn down by hardship and fear. There was a strength in her jaw, a determination in the set of her shoulders that spoke of someone who had survived more than she should have had to. Tell me about him, he said. Your husband. She set down her biscuit carefully. His name is Robert Paulson, He owns a shipping company in St. Louis, very successful, very respected. Everyone thinks he is wonderful." Her voice was bitter. "We were married when I was 19. At first he was kind, attentive. Then after about 6 months, things changed. He started criticizing everything I did. The way I dressed, the way I spoke, the food I cooked. Then the criticism turned to pushing, then hitting, then worse." Benjamin felt anger rising in his chest. "Did you have family there?" "My parents died of cholera when I was 16. I lived with my aunt until I married Robert. When I tried to tell her what was happening, she said I was exaggerating, that I should try harder to be a good wife." Beatrice wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I stayed for 6 years. 6 years of walking on eggshells, of wearing long sleeves in summer to hide the bruises, of lying to everyone about how I got hurt. Then one night, he came home drunk and put a knife to my throat. He said if I ever tried to leave him, he would kill me. But you left anyway." "I left anyway," she confirmed. 2 weeks later, when he went on a business trip to Chicago, I took what little money I could find, a few pieces of clothing, and I walked out the door. I knew he would come looking for me, so I could not take a train or a stage. Those were the first places he would check, so I walked. I traded my wedding ring for supplies in a little town in Kansas. I worked as a laundress in a mining camp in Colorado for 2 months, saved up enough to buy better boots. I kept moving west, always west, because that is where people go to disappear. "Do you think he is still looking for you?" "I know he is." She met his eyes. "Robert does not let go of what he considers his, and in his mind I will always be his property." Benjamin stood and began clearing the dishes. "Then we will have to make sure he never finds you." Over the following weeks, Beatrice slowly regained her strength. She cooked, cleaned, mended clothes, and tended the small vegetable garden behind the house that had gone wild since Sarah's death. Benjamin found himself coming up with excuses to be near the house during the day, rather than staying out on the range with his cattle. He told himself it was just to make sure she was safe, but he knew it was more than that. She made him laugh. He had forgotten what that felt like. She told stories about her childhood in St. Louis, about the riverboats and the markets and the grand houses along the river. She had a quick wit and an observant eye, and she noticed things about the ranch that he had stopped seeing years ago. "Why do you call it the Broken J?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch together, a routine they had fallen into. "The brand," he said, showing her the mark on one of his saddles. It was a J with a break in the middle. "When Sarah and I started this place, we could not decide on a name. Then one day, the branding iron we had ordered arrived broken. The blacksmith had made a mistake. Sarah said it was perfect, that we were building something beautiful out of broken pieces, so the Broken J it became. She sounds like she was a wonderful person. She was." He looked over at Beatrice. "I think she would have liked you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning they were not quite ready to acknowledge. October came, bringing cold nights and the first hint of frost. Benjamin rode into Cheyenne for supplies, and when he returned, Beatrice was waiting anxiously on the porch. "What is wrong?" he asked, dismounting quickly. "A man came by while you were gone. He did not come to the house, but I saw him from the window. He was sitting on his horse at the top of the ridge, just watching the place." Benjamin's jaw tightened. "What did he look like?" "I could not see clearly. He was too far away, but he stayed there for nearly an hour before riding off toward the south." "Could have been a drifter," Benjamin said, though he did not believe it, "or someone thinking about trying their luck at rustling." But he saw the fear in her eyes, and he knew she was thinking the same thing he was. Robert Paulson had found her. That night, Benjamin loaded his rifles and placed one beside the front door and one beside his bed. He also gave Beatrice a small pistol and taught her how to use it. I do not know if I could actually shoot someone, she said, holding the weapon gingerly. You could if your life depended on it, Benjamin assured her. But hopefully it will not come to that. This is just a precaution. They went to bed tense and nervous, but the night passed quietly. So did the next night and the one after that. Slowly, they began to relax again, though Benjamin made sure to keep the rifles loaded. The first snow came in early November, a light dusting that melted by mid-morning. Benjamin was in the barn repairing a stall door when Beatrice came in, her cheeks flushed from the cold. I made bread, she announced, and I thought you might want some while it is still warm. He followed her back to the house, where the kitchen was filled with the smell of fresh baked bread and butter. They ate standing at the counter, laughing when the butter dripped down his chin. Without thinking, Beatrice reached up and wiped it away with her thumb. The gesture was so intimate, so natural that they both froze. Beatrice, Benjamin said softly. Do not, she said, stepping back. Please do not say anything. I know what you are going to say, and it cannot happen. Why not? Because I am still married in the eyes of the law, because I have brought danger to your doorstep, because you deserve better than someone else's broken wife. Her eyes filled with tears. Because I care about you too much to ruin your life. Benjamin crossed the space between them in 2 strides and cupped her face in his hands. You could never ruin my life. These past 2 months, since you arrived, I have felt alive again for the first time in 3 years. I wake up looking forward to the day. I come inside looking forward to seeing your face. I go to sleep grateful that you are here, safe under my roof. Benjamin, she whispered. I am falling in love with you, Beatrice. I might have already fallen, and I think you feel the same way about me. It does not matter what I feel, she said, but she did not pull away from his touch. I cannot give you what you want. I cannot be your wife, not legally, and you deserve a real marriage, a real family. What I deserve is to be happy. What I deserve is to have someone to share this life with. I do not care about a piece of paper or what the law says. I care about you. She closed her eyes and tears spilled down her cheeks. He will come. Someday, Robert will find me and he will destroy everything. Then we will face him together. Benjamin leaned his forehead against hers. I am not afraid of him, Beatrice, and you should not be either. Not anymore. She kissed him then, or he kissed her. Later, neither of them could say for sure who moved first. All Benjamin knew was that her lips were soft and warm, and that kissing her felt like coming home after a long journey. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was smiling through her tears. I love you too, she whispered. I think I have loved you since the day I woke up and saw you sitting beside my bed, waiting to make sure I was all right. That night, things changed between them. They did not sleep together, not yet. Beatrice was not ready for that, and Benjamin respected her boundaries. But they held hands on the porch as they watched the stars. They stole kisses in the kitchen when no one else was around. They talked late into the night about their dreams and fears and hopes for the future. The ranch hands, Tom and Charlie, noticed the change but said nothing. They had both liked Beatrice from the start, appreciating her cooking and her cheerful demeanor. If their boss had finally found happiness again, they were all for it. Thanksgiving came, and Beatrice cooked a feast. Benjamin invited Tom and Charlie to eat with them, and they all crowded around the dining table, passing dishes and telling stories. For the first time since Sarah died, the house felt full of life and warmth. This is the best meal I have had in years, Tom declared, helping himself to a 3rd serving of mashed potatoes. He was 55, weathered and wise, and had worked for Benjamin since the beginning. Better than the slop Benjamin tries to pass off as food, Charlie added with a grin. He was younger, only 28, quick with a joke and quicker with a rope. My cooking is not that bad, Benjamin protested. All three of them looked at him skeptically, and even he had to laugh. After dinner, as Beatrice and Benjamin cleaned up together, she said quietly, "This is what I always wanted. A home full of laughter and good people. I never had that with Robert." "You have it now," Benjamin told her, "for as long as you want it." December brought heavier snows and bitter cold. Benjamin moved his cattle to the lower pastures where they would be more sheltered. The work was hard and constant, but he did not mind. Every evening he came home to a warm house, a hot meal, and Beatrice waiting for him. They were sitting by the fire one night, her head resting on his shoulder, when she said, "I want to be with you properly, as a wife in every way." Benjamin turned to look at her. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." She met his eyes steadily. "I know we cannot be married legally, not while Robert is alive, but I want to be your wife in every way that matters. I want to share your bed, your life, your future." "We could have our own ceremony," Benjamin suggested, "in the chapel. It would not be legal, but it would be real to us, before God." Her face lit up. "I would like that." They were married on a cold, clear day just before Christmas. Tom and Charlie stood as witnesses, and Benjamin spoke vows he had written himself. He promised to love her, protect her, and honor her for all the days of his life. She promised the same, her voice strong and clear. They exchanged simple gold bands that Benjamin had purchased on a secret trip to Cheyenne. When he kissed her as his wife, she wrapped her arms around his neck and held him tight, and he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. That night, she came to his room, wearing one of Sarah's nightgowns. Benjamin had worried it might feel wrong, but it did not. Sarah was his past, treasured and honored. Beatrice was his future. There was room in his heart for both. "I am nervous," Beatrice admitted as she stood by the bed. "So am I," Benjamin said honestly. "We can wait if you want to." "No," she came to him, reaching up to touch his face. "I have waited long enough to feel safe, to feel loved. I want this. I want you." He made love to her slowly, carefully, taking his time to learn what made her sigh and what made her gasp. She had been afraid at first, tensing at his touch, and he realized that her experiences with her husband had taught her that intimacy meant pain. But he was patient, and eventually she relaxed into his arms, letting herself feel pleasure for perhaps the first time in her life. Afterwards, as they lay tangled together under the quilts, she cried a little. "Did I hurt you?" Benjamin asked, alarmed. "No," she laughed through her tears. "No, you did not hurt me. I just never knew it could be like that. Gentle, beautiful. I never knew I could feel so safe in someone's arms." He held her close and stroked her hair until she fell asleep. Then he lay awake, watching her face in the moonlight that streamed through the window, and felt a fierce protectiveness rise in his chest. If Robert Paulson ever came for her, he would have to go through Benjamin first. And Benjamin would not go down easy. Winter deepened, and the ranch settled into a peaceful routine. Beatrice thrived, putting on healthy weight and losing the hunted look that had shadowed her eyes when she first arrived. She laughed often, sang while she worked, and filled the house with small touches that made it a home rather than just a place to sleep. She brought wildflowers inside in the spring, even though they died within a day or two. She reorganized the kitchen to be more efficient. She mended the curtains and made new cushions for the chairs. She even convinced Benjamin to let her paint the bedroom a soft blue color she had mixed herself. In February, Tom came to the house looking worried. "Boss, we have got trouble. Found 3 steers with their throats cut up in the north pasture. Whoever did it left them to rot. This was not rustlers looking for meat. This was someone sending a message." Benjamin felt ice form in his stomach. He looked at Beatrice, who had gone pale. "Did you see any tracks?" "Just one set, heading south toward the main road. Whoever it was knows the land, knew where to find the cattle." "Double the watches," Benjamin ordered, And keep your rifles close. We have got someone out there who means harm." That night neither Benjamin nor Beatrice slept much. They lay in bed holding each other, listening to every creak of the house, every sound from outside. "It is him," Beatrice finally said. "I know it is. We do not know that for certain. Who else would kill your cattle for no reason? Who else would be watching us, trying to frighten us?" She sat up, wrapping the blanket around herself. "I should leave. I should go before he hurts you or Tom or Charlie. This is my fault. You are not going anywhere." Benjamin pulled her back down beside him. "This is your home now, our home, and we are going to defend it." 2 days later, a stranger rode onto the property. Benjamin was in the barn when Charlie came running to get him. "Boss, there is a man at the house. Fancy clothes, riding a horse that cost more than I make in a year. He is asking for Beatrice." Benjamin grabbed his rifle and headed for the house at a run. When he came around the corner, he saw a man on horseback, tall and well-dressed, with dark hair graying at the temples. The man was handsome in a cold, calculated way. He sat his horse like a king surveying his domain. "Can I help you?" Benjamin called out, keeping his rifle visible but not aimed. The man turned to look at him, and Benjamin saw eyes as hard as chips of ice. "I am looking for my wife. I have reason to believe she is here." "I do not know what you are talking about. Do not play games with me, cowboy." Robert Paulson's voice was cultured, educated, and filled with contempt. "I tracked her across 3 states. I know she is here. I saw her through your window 2 days ago." Beatrice appeared in the doorway of the house, and Benjamin cursed under his breath. He had told her to stay inside, out of sight. "Hello, Robert," she said, her voice steady despite the fear Benjamin could see on her face. Robert dismounted and took a step toward the porch. Benjamin moved to block his path, raising his rifle slightly. "That is close enough," Benjamin said. Robert stopped, but his attention was fixed on Beatrice. "My dear wife, you have led me on quite a chase. Do you have any idea how much time and money I have spent tracking you down?" "I am not your wife anymore," Beatrice said. "I left you. I will never go back to you." "You do not have a choice in the matter. The law says you are my wife, my property, and I have come to take you home." "Like hell you have," Benjamin said flatly. "This is my land and you are trespassing. I suggest you get back on your horse and ride out of here before I put a bullet in you." Robert finally turned to look at Benjamin properly, studying him like a bug under glass. "So this is how it is. You have been sharing his bed, I suppose." He directed the question at Beatrice. "Playing at being his whore while he plays at being your protector." Benjamin stepped forward, his finger moving to the trigger of his rifle. "You need to leave, now. Or what? You will shoot me, in front of witnesses." Robert gestured around the property. Benjamin saw Tom and Charlie had emerged from the barn, both armed. "If you kill me, they will hang you." "Is she really worth that?" "Yes," Benjamin said simply. "She is." Something flickered across Robert's face, surprise perhaps, or anger. "I could have you arrested for harboring a runaway wife. I could have her arrested for theft. She took money from my house when she left." "I took $40, Beatrice said. $40 from the household money that I was supposed to use for marketing. Hardly theft, considering you took 6 years of my life." "You ungrateful bitch." Robert's mask of civility slipped, revealing the cruelty beneath. "I gave you everything. A fine house, fine clothes, a position in society. And this is how you repay me. By running off to play house with some dirt-poor rancher in the middle of nowhere. You gave me bruises and broken bones and nightmares," Beatrice shot back. "You gave me fear and pain and the belief that I deserved it. So yes, I ran. And I would do it again." Robert took another step forward, and this time Benjamin raised the rifle to his shoulder, aiming directly at the other man's chest. "I said that is close enough." They stood frozen like that for a long moment. Finally, Robert stepped back and remounted his horse, but his eyes never left Beatrice. "This is not over," he said coldly. "You belong to me, Beatrice. You always will, and I will get you back one way or another. The law is on my side." "The law may be," Benjamin said, "but God and right are on ours. Now get off my land before I forget that I am a Christian man." Robert wheeled his horse around and rode off, but as he reached the edge of the property, he turned back and called out, "I will see you both in hell before I let you keep what is mine." As soon as he was out of sight, Beatrice's knees buckled. Benjamin caught her and carried her into the house, setting her gently on the sofa. She was shaking, her face white. "He is going to kill us," she whispered. "He is going to kill us both, and he will make it look like an accident or self-defense, and no one will question it because he is rich and respectable, and we are just common people." "He is not going to touch you," Benjamin said fiercely. "I promise you that." Tom and Charlie came into the house, both looking grim. "That was Robert Paulson?" Tom asked. "The man she has been running from." "That was him," Benjamin confirmed. "Well, he is one cold son of a bitch, pardon my language, Miss Beatrice." Charlie set his rifle by the door. "But he is also a coward. Did you see how quick he backed down when you aimed at him? Men like that, they are used to hurting people who cannot fight back. They do not know what to do when someone stands up to them." "Charlie is right," Tom said, "but we need to be smart about this. He is going to come back, probably with help. We need to be ready." They spent the rest of the day fortifying the ranch. They moved the cattle closer to the house where they could keep an eye on them. They took turns standing watch through the night. Benjamin barely slept, and when he did, it was with one hand on his rifle and the other on Beatrice. 3 days passed with no sign of Robert Paulson. On the 4th day, Benjamin rode into Cheyenne to speak with the territorial marshal. He found Marshal Garrett in his office, a grizzled man in his 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. "Marshal, I need to report a threat," Benjamin began, and then he told the whole story. About finding Beatrice in his chapel, about her walking from Missouri to escape an abusive husband, about Robert's visit and his threats. Marshal Garrett listened carefully, taking notes. When Benjamin finished, the marshal sighed and set down his pen. "Here is the problem, Jameson. Legally, she is still his wife, and as his wife, he has a legal right to retrieve her. The law sees a wife as a man's property, no different than his horse or his house." "That is a bad law," Benjamin said flatly. "I agree with you, but it is still the law." The marshal leaned back in his chair. "Now, if he were to come onto your property and threaten violence, that would be different. You would have a right to defend yourself and anyone under your protection. But unless he actually does something, my hands are tied. So we just wait for him to attack. I am afraid so. But I will tell you this." Marshal Garrett leaned forward. "There have been several inquiries about a missing woman fitting Mrs. Paulson's description. They came from a private detective hired by a man in St. Louis. I told them I had not seen anyone like that, and I will keep telling them that. The law may not be on your side, but I am." Benjamin shook the marshal's hand, grateful but not comforted. He stopped at the general store on his way out of town to pick up ammunition and supplies. As he was leaving, the storekeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, who had always been friendly, stopped him. "Mr. Jameson, I heard about your troubles," she said quietly. "I just want you to know that there are a lot of folks in town who think what you are doing is right. A woman should not have to stay with a man who beats her, no matter what the law says. If you need anything at all, you send word." "Thank you, madam. That means a lot. Also," she added, pressing a small package into his hands, "I included some extra coffee and sugar. No charge. Consider it a wedding gift, even if it is not official." News traveled fast in a small town, apparently. Benjamin thanked her again and headed home, his heart a little lighter despite the circumstances. When he got back to the ranch, Beatrice was in the kitchen making dinner. She turned when she heard him come in, and the smile that lit up her face made his breath catch. How had he lived without her? How had he survived 3 years of loneliness without realizing how empty his life had become? "How did it go?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "The marshal says his hands are tied legally, but he is on our side. So are a lot of people in town, apparently." He set down the supplies and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "We are going to get through this, Beatrice. I promise you." She held him tight, her face pressed against his chest. "I am so sorry I brought this into your life. You brought joy into my life. You brought laughter and warmth and love. Whatever else comes with that, I will gladly face it." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the warm kitchen while the sun set outside, and the world turned cold and dark. That night, as they lay in bed, Beatrice said softly, "If something happens to me, if Robert finds a way to take me back, I want you to know that these months with you have been the happiest of my life. You showed me what love is supposed to be. You gave me a home. I will never forget that, no matter what happens." "Nothing is going to happen to you," Benjamin said fiercely. "I will die before I let him take you." "That is what I am afraid of," she whispered, but she held him close and eventually fell asleep in his arms. A week passed, then 2. There was no sign of Robert Paulson, and they began to hope that maybe he had given up, that maybe he had returned to St. Louis to nurse his wounded pride. They were wrong. It was late March, with spring finally beginning to assert itself over the Wyoming winter, when Charlie came riding in at a gallop just after dawn. Benjamin was in the barn, and he ran out when he heard the commotion. "Fire!" Charlie shouted. "The south pasture is on fire, and it is spreading fast. We need every hand to fight it." Benjamin ran for the house to get Beatrice, but she was already coming out, having heard Charlie's shouts. "Get to town," he told her. "Find Marshal Garrett and tell him what is happening. This is not an accident. I am not leaving you to fight this alone." "Beatrice, please." He grabbed her shoulders. "If the fire reaches the house, if something happens to me, I need to know you are safe. Please just go." Reluctantly, she nodded. He saddled the fastest horse for her and watched her ride off toward Cheyenne, before joining Tom and Charlie to fight the fire. The next few hours were a blur of smoke and heat and desperate effort. They beat back flames with wet blankets, dug trenches to stop the fire's spread, and drove the cattle to safety. By the time they finally got the fire under control, Benjamin's hands were blistered, his lungs ached from smoke, and his clothes were singed and ruined. But the ranch house still stood, and most of the cattle were safe. The south pasture was a blackened ruin, but it would recover with time. "This was set deliberately," Tom said, pointing to several spots where the fire had clearly been started. "See here, and here." Someone poured accelerant and lit it up. "Paulson," Benjamin said grimly. "He was probably hoping we would all die fighting it, or at least that it would destroy the ranch and leave us with nothing." "What are we going to do, boss?" "We are going to end this," Benjamin said, "one way or another." He rode into Cheyenne to find Beatrice and the marshal. He found them both at the marshal's office. Beatrice ran to him when he came in, throwing her arms around him despite how filthy he was. "Thank God you are all right," she said. "I was so worried." Marshal Garrett stood up from his desk. "Miss Beatrice told me about the fire. You think Paulson set it?" "I know he did. We found where it was started, multiple points of origin. This was arson, pure and simple." "Can you prove it was him?" "No," Benjamin admitted. "But who else would it be? And this is not the first incident. First, my cattle were killed. Then this." The marshal rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. It is still not enough for me to arrest him without proof, but it does give me cause to ask him some questions. You know where he is staying? The hotel, I would assume. He is not the type to sleep rough. I will pay him a visit. Marshal Garrett reached for his hat. In the meantime, you two should stay in town tonight. It is not safe at the ranch until we sort this out. They took a room at the boarding house, and Mrs. Chen, who also ran the boarding house along with her store, insisted on bringing them hot water for a bath and a meal. As Benjamin scrubbed the soot and ash from his skin, Beatrice sat on the bed looking worried. "This is only going to get worse," she said. "Robert will not stop. He will keep escalating until someone gets killed. Then maybe it is time we stopped playing defense and went on the offense," Benjamin said. "What do you mean?" "I mean maybe it is time we found a way to end your marriage legally. Is there any way to get a divorce?" Beatrice shook her head. "Not without his consent, and he would never agree to it. The only other way is if he dies." They looked at each other, and Benjamin saw the same thought reflected in her eyes, but neither of them said it out loud. They were good people, Christian people. They could not murder a man, no matter how evil he was, could they? No. Benjamin pushed the thought away. There had to be another way. The next morning, Marshal Garrett came to the boarding house with news. "I went to the hotel to question Paulson, but he checked out yesterday morning. The clerk says he headed south toward Colorado." "Do you think he left for good?" Beatrice asked hopefully. "I doubt it," the marshal said. "More likely he is trying to establish an alibi. He can claim he was in Colorado when the fire started, even though we know he said it before he left." "So what do we do?" Benjamin asked. "You watch your backs. I will put out word to the marshals in the surrounding territories to keep an eye out for him. But beyond that, I do not have much I can do." He looked at Beatrice sympathetically. "I am sorry, madam. I wish I could do more." They returned to the ranch that afternoon. Tom and Charlie had cleaned up the worst of the fire damage and assured them that everything was secure. But the sense of safety that Beatrice had built up over the past months was gone. She jumped at shadows, startled at unexpected sounds, and barely slept. Benjamin worried about her. She was losing weight again, her face taking on that hunted look he remembered from when she first arrived. One morning in early April, he found her being sick in the outhouse. When she came back to the house, pale and shaky, he made her sit down and felt her forehead for fever. "I am fine," she said. "Just my stomach is upset." But it happened again the next morning and the morning after that. Finally, on the fourth morning, as she wiped her mouth with a shaky hand, she looked up at him with wide eyes. "Benjamin, I think I might be with child." Time seemed to stop. Benjamin stared at her, his mind racing. "A baby. They were going to have a baby. Are you sure?" he asked. "I am 2 weeks late with my monthly courses, and I have been feeling ill every morning. I have felt this way before." She looked down at her hands. "I was with child once with Robert, but he pushed me down the stairs when I was 3 months along, and I lost the baby. After that, I was glad I never conceived again. I could not bear the thought of bringing a child into that house." Benjamin knelt in front of her and took her hands in his. "This is different. This child will be born into a house full of love, with parents who will protect it with their lives. This is a blessing, Beatrice." Tears streamed down her face. "But what if Robert comes back? What if he tries to claim the child as his? The law says any child born to a married woman belongs to her husband." "The law can go to hell," Benjamin said fiercely. "This is our child, mine and yours. And I will never let anyone take it from us." They held each other for a long time, joy and fear warring in both their hearts. A baby was a miracle, a gift, but it also raised the stakes even higher. Now they were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for their child's future. Benjamin rode back to Cheyenne the next day to speak with Marshal Garrett again. He told him about the baby, about their fears regarding what Robert might do. The marshal listened carefully, then said, "I have been doing some research into divorce law. There might be a way to get her marriage dissolved, but it would require going through the territorial courts and it would not be quick. We would need to prove abandonment or abuse." "She has the scars to prove abuse," Benjamin said. "Her wrists, her back. He broke her ribs once." She said people saw the bruises. "Were there any doctors involved? Any official reports?" "I do not know. She went to the law in St. Louis, but they did nothing." "Get me the names of anyone who might have witnessed the abuse. Doctors, neighbors, friends. If we can build a strong enough case, we might be able to petition for a divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty. It is a long shot, but it is worth trying." Benjamin went home with renewed hope. That evening, he and Beatrice sat down with paper and pen, and she wrote out everything she could remember. Names of neighbors who had seen her bruised, the name of the doctor who had treated her broken ribs, her aunt, who had dismissed her concerns but who could not deny having seen the injuries. "I will send letters to all of them," Benjamin said. "Ask them to provide sworn statements about what they witnessed." "Robert will find out," Beatrice warned. "He has people watching for anything that might lead him to me. Let him find out. We are done hiding." Over the next few weeks, Benjamin sent out letters and waited for responses. Meanwhile, spring turned the ranch green and beautiful. Beatrice's morning sickness began to ease, and she started to show, just the smallest swell of her belly that made Benjamin's heart soar every time he saw it. They were cautiously happy, stealing moments of joy where they could find them. They made plans for the baby's room, talked about names, and dreamed about the future. Beatrice wanted a son who would grow up to be strong and kind like his father. Benjamin secretly hoped for a daughter with her mother's spirit and courage. In late May, responses began trickling in. The doctor wrote back, confirming that he had treated Beatrice for broken ribs and had suspected domestic violence. A neighbor wrote a careful letter stating that she had often seen Beatrice with bruises and had heard shouting coming from the Paulson house, late at night. Even Beatrice's aunt grudgingly admitted in her letter that she had witnessed Robert being rough with Beatrice on several occasions. With these statements in hand, Benjamin and Marshal Garrett went to the territorial judge to petition for divorce. The judge, an older man named Henderson, listened to their case with a stern expression. "This is highly irregular," he said when they finished. "Most cases of this nature require the wife to appear in person to give testimony. With respect, Your Honor, Mrs. Paulson fears for her life if her location becomes known to her husband," Marshal Garrett said. "He has already attempted arson and destruction of property in his efforts to intimidate her." Judge Henderson reviewed the statements carefully. Finally, he looked up. "I will grant a preliminary hearing, but I will need to notify Mr. Paulson of these proceedings. He has a legal right to defend himself against these accusations." "Your Honor, that could put Mrs. Paulson in danger," Benjamin protested. "I understand your concern, Mr. Jameson, but the law is the law. I will give you 2 weeks to prepare your case. The hearing will be held on June 15th. I suggest you use that time to ensure Mrs. Paulson's safety and to gather any additional evidence you can find." It was not the answer Benjamin had hoped for, but it was better than nothing. They now had a legal path forward. The question was whether they could survive the next few weeks until the hearing. He was right to be concerned. 2 days after the hearing was scheduled, Robert Paulson returned to Wyoming Territory, and this time he brought help. Benjamin was working with a difficult mare in the corral when he heard gunshots. He ran for the house, his heart in his throat. Beatrice was supposed to be inside, safe. But when he burst through the door, the house was empty. "Beatrice," he called out. No answer. He ran outside and saw Tom running toward him from the barn. "They took her, boss. 3 men, they grabbed her while she was hanging laundry. I tried to stop them, but they knocked me cold. When I came to, they were gone." Benjamin felt something break inside him. Which way did they go? "South, toward the old mining road." Benjamin ran for his horse, Tom and Charlie right behind him. They rode hard, following the tracks left by the kidnappers. Benjamin's mind was racing. If Robert hurt her, if he hurt the baby, Benjamin did not know what he would do. They followed the tracks for over an hour before they saw them. 4 horses in the distance, 3 men and Beatrice. She was on a horse in front of Robert, his arm locked around her waist. Even from a distance, Benjamin could see her struggling. "Stop right there, Jameson," Robert called out as they got closer. He had a gun pressed to Beatrice's side. "Come any closer and I will shoot her. I would rather see her dead than with you." Benjamin reined in his horse, holding up his hands. "Let her go, Paulson. This is between you and me." "You are right about that." Robert's face was twisted with rage and something darker. "Madness, maybe. You stole my wife. You turned her against me. You put your bastard child in her belly. You have destroyed my life, my reputation. Everyone in St. Louis is talking about how Robert Paulson's wife ran away to be with another man. Do you have any idea what that has done to my business, my standing in the community?" "That is not my fault or hers," Benjamin said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You did this to yourself with your cruelty." "Cruelty," Robert laughed bitterly. "I gave her everything. I tried to make her into a proper wife. It was not cruelty to discipline her when she failed. It was my right as her husband." "You are insane," Beatrice spat. She was pale but defiant, her eyes blazing with anger rather than fear. "You beat me because you enjoyed it. You hurt me because it made you feel powerful. But I am not your victim anymore, Robert. I am not afraid of you." Robert's arm tightened around her, making her gasp. "You will always be mine. And if I cannot have you, no one will." Everything happened very fast after that. Robert started to lift the gun, pointing it at Beatrice's head. Benjamin drew his pistol in one smooth motion and fired. The shot caught Robert in the shoulder, spinning him around. His gun went off, but the bullet went wild, hitting nothing. Beatrice threw herself off the horse, hitting the ground hard. Benjamin was off his own horse in an instant, running to her side. She was breathing, conscious, though she had the wind knocked out of her. Behind them, Tom and Charlie had their guns trained on the other 2 men, who wisely decided not to reach for their weapons. Robert was on the ground, clutching his bleeding shoulder and cursing. "It is over, Paulson," Benjamin said, helping Beatrice to her feet. "You are going to prison for kidnapping, attempted murder, and arson. You will never hurt her again." Marshal Garrett arrived less than an hour later, summoned by a ranch hand who had witnessed the kidnapping and ridden to get help. He arrested Robert and his accomplices on the spot, binding Robert's wound before hauling him onto a horse. As they prepared to head back to Cheyenne, Robert looked at Beatrice one last time. "I loved you," he said, and for the first time he almost sounded sincere. "In my own way, I loved you." "That was not love," Beatrice said quietly. "I know what love is now, and it looks nothing like what you gave me." They watched as the marshal led Robert and his men away. Benjamin kept his arm around Beatrice, holding her close. She was shaking, but she was alive. They were both alive. The baby. He asked softly, "I think the baby is fine. I did not hit that hard when I fell." They rode back to the ranch slowly, Benjamin keeping Beatrice close. Tom and Charlie rode ahead to make sure the ranch was secure and to check on the other hands. That night, as they lay in bed, Beatrice pressed Benjamin's hand to her belly. "I felt it move today," she said. "Right before Robert took me, I felt our baby move for the first time." Benjamin closed his eyes, overcome with emotion. They had come so close to losing everything. But they were safe now. Robert was in custody, and with the kidnapping charge, there was no way he would go free anytime soon. The divorce hearing proceeded as planned on June 15th. With Robert in jail and facing serious criminal charges, Judge Henderson had no trouble granting Beatrice a divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty and abandonment. The marriage was dissolved, and Beatrice was finally free. Benjamin and Beatrice were legally married in a small ceremony in Cheyenne 2 weeks later. Marshall Garrett gave Beatrice away, Mrs. Chen made the wedding cake, and Tom and Charlie stood as witnesses. It was simple and perfect, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin kissed Beatrice with his whole heart, knowing that this time, nothing and no one could tear them apart. Robert Paulson was tried and convicted of kidnapping, attempted murder, and arson. He was sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. The judge made it clear that he found Robert's treatment of his wife to be reprehensible, and that the maximum sentence was warranted. As the guards led him away, Robert looked at Beatrice one last time, but she did not flinch or look away. She was done being afraid of him. Summer turned to fall, and Beatrice grew round with their child. She was healthy and happy, and Benjamin was amazed every day by the miracle of new life growing inside her. They prepared the nursery together, painting it a soft yellow and building a cradle from cottonwood. In late October, on a crisp morning with frost on the ground, Beatrice went into labor. Benjamin rode to get the midwife from town, then paced outside the bedroom door for the next 12 hours while Beatrice labored. He heard her cries of pain and felt helpless, unable to do anything but wait. Finally, as the sun was setting, he heard a new sound. The thin, wavering cry of a newborn baby. The midwife opened the door, smiling. "You can come in now, Mr. Jameson. You have a son." Benjamin entered the room in a daze. Beatrice was propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Benjamin, come meet our son." He crossed to the bed and looked down at the baby in her arms. His son. He had a son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and had his eyes screwed shut against the light. His tiny fists waved in the air, and Benjamin gently touched one with his finger. The baby immediately grabbed hold, his grip surprisingly strong. "He is perfect," Benjamin said, his voice choked with emotion. "You are both perfect." "What should we name him?" Beatrice asked. They had discussed names for months but had never settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Benjamin knew exactly what the right name was. "Samuel," he said. "Samuel Joseph Jameson, after my father and yours." Beatrice smiled through her tears. "Samuel, I love it." That night, after the midwife had gone and Beatrice and the baby were both sleeping peacefully, Benjamin sat in the rocking chair by the bed and watched them. His wife and his son. His family. He thought about the day 7 months ago when he had found Beatrice collapsed in his chapel, and how his life had changed in that single moment. She had been running from darkness, from pain and fear and cruelty. He had been drowning in loneliness, going through the motions of life without really living. They had saved each other. The first few months with baby Samuel were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. He was a healthy, happy baby who rarely cried and who seemed fascinated by everything around him. Beatrice was a natural mother, patient and loving, and Benjamin discovered a well of tenderness in himself he had not known existed. As winter settled in over Wyoming, they spent long evenings by the fire, taking turns rocking Samuel and telling him stories he was too young to understand, but that they enjoyed telling anyway. Beatrice would sing to him in a soft, sweet voice, lullabies her mother had sung to her. Benjamin would tell him about the ranch, about the cattle and horses and the wide open sky. Tom and Charlie were both completely smitten with the baby. They competed to see who could make him laugh first, and they carved him toys and brought him little gifts whenever they went to town. The ranch house, which had been so quiet and empty for so long, was now filled with life and laughter and love. In the spring, when Samuel was 6 months old, they received word that Robert Paulson had died in prison. He had gotten into a fight with another inmate and had been stabbed. Marshal Garrett came to the ranch personally to deliver the news. Benjamin watched Beatrice carefully as the marshal spoke, looking for her reaction. She was quiet for a long moment, bouncing Samuel gently in her arms. Finally, she said, "I suppose I should feel something. Sadness or relief or even satisfaction. But mostly I just feel tired. Tired of thinking about him, tired of being afraid." "You do not have to be afraid anymore," Benjamin said, putting his arm around her. "I know." She leaned into him. "And I am grateful for that. But I also know that even though he is gone, it will take time to fully heal from what he did. Some scars are deeper than others." "We have all the time in the world," Benjamin assured her, "and I will be with you every step of the way." As the months passed, Beatrice did heal. Slowly but surely the shadows left her eyes. She laughed more easily, relaxed more fully. She stopped looking over her shoulder when they went to town. She stopped having nightmares about Robert coming to take her away. She bloomed. There was no other word for it. She became more confident, more assured. She took an active role in running the ranch, learning about the cattle and the business side of things. She made friends in town, joined the ladies' auxiliary at the church, and became a respected member of the community. No one spoke about her past anymore. She was just Beatrice Jameson, Benjamin's wife and Samuel's mother, a woman who had overcome hardship and found happiness. By Samuel's 2nd birthday, Beatrice was expecting again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and she barely slowed down even as her belly grew. In the fall of 1875, she gave birth to twin girls. They named them Rose and Lily after the wildflowers that grew on the ranch every spring. The girls were identical, with Beatrice's hazel eyes and Benjamin's dark hair. They were also complete opposites in temperament. Rose was quiet and thoughtful, happy to sit and play by herself for hours. Lily was loud and adventurous, always getting into mischief and keeping everyone on their toes. Samuel adored his little sisters and took his role as big brother very seriously. He would sit with them for hours, showing them his toys and telling them stories in his toddler babble. Benjamin and Beatrice watched their children play together and marveled at the family they had created. Life on the ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. The cattle operation thrived, and Benjamin expanded their herd. They built a larger barn and hired 2 more ranch hands to help with the increased workload. Beatrice turned the wild garden behind the house into something spectacular, with vegetables and herbs and flowers that attracted butterflies and hummingbirds. On summer evenings, they would all sit on the porch together, Benjamin and Beatrice in their rocking chairs with the twins on their laps, Samuel playing at their feet. They would watch the sun set over the mountains and count their blessings. "You ever think about Missouri?" Benjamin asked one such evening when the children were all asleep and they were alone under the stars. "About the life you left behind, sometimes," Beatrice admitted. "But not with regret. That life, as painful as it was, led me here. To you, to our children, to this home. I would not change any of it, even the hard parts, because they made me who I am today. I thank God every day that you walked into my chapel," Benjamin said, reaching over to take her hand. "You gave me back my life, Beatrice. You reminded me what it feels like to be truly happy." "We gave that to each other," she corrected him. "You saved me just as much as I saved you." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the stars wheel overhead. Inside the house, their children slept safe and sound. The cattle grazed peacefully in the pastures. The wind whispered through the cottonwoods. Everything was as it should be. Years passed, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. Samuel grew into a strong, kind boy who loved the ranch and the animals. The twins kept everyone on their toes with their energy and curiosity. In 1878, Beatrice gave birth to another son, whom they named Thomas after Tom, who had become like family to them all. The ranch continued to prosper. Benjamin's reputation as a fair and honest rancher spread, and he became a respected figure in the territory. Beatrice's kindness and generosity made her beloved in the community. She helped establish a school in Cheyenne, opened her home to travelers who needed shelter, and was always the first to help when a neighbor fell on hard times. Their marriage deepened and strengthened with each passing year. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs. They had their disagreements, of course, but they always worked through them with patience and love. Benjamin never raised his voice to her in anger, and she never went to bed without telling him she loved him. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Benjamin took Beatrice back to the chapel where he had first found her. He had rebuilt it, making it stronger and more beautiful. Inside, he had hung a plaque that read, "Here, two broken hearts found healing in each other." "I wanted you to have a place to come and pray," he explained. "A place that is yours, that reminds you of how far you have come." Beatrice looked around the chapel with tears in her eyes. "It is beautiful, Benjamin, thank you." They knelt together at the altar, and Beatrice prayed aloud for the first time since that day 10 years ago when she had collapsed in this very spot, exhausted and terrified and desperate for mercy. "Thank you," she prayed, her hand in Benjamin's. "Thank you for leading me here, for giving me this man and this life. Thank you for showing me that love does not have to hurt, that home can be a place of safety and joy. Thank you for my children, for this land, for every blessing I have received. Help me to always be grateful, to always remember where I came from and how far you have brought me. Amen." "Amen," Benjamin echoed, squeezing her hand. They walked back to the house together, arms around each other, ready to rejoin the beautiful chaos of their life. Samuel was probably teaching the twins how to climb trees, and little Thomas was likely getting into the cookie jar with the help of his doting older siblings. There would be dirt to wash off, scraped knees to bandage, stories to tell before bedtime. It was everything Benjamin had ever wanted and more than he had ever dared to hope for. The Broken J Ranch, built from broken pieces, had become whole again. And the woman who had walked 3 states to escape her past had found a future full of love, laughter, and endless possibility. As the years continued to roll by, their family remained close-knit and strong. Samuel eventually took over more responsibilities on the ranch, working alongside his father and learning everything Benjamin could teach him about cattle ranching and honest business. The twins grew into beautiful young women, Rose becoming a teacher and Lily opening a dress shop in Cheyenne. Thomas followed his brother into ranching, and together the 2 young men expanded the Broken J operations even further. Benjamin and Beatrice became grandparents many times over, their home always full of children and laughter. They grew old together gracefully, their hair turning silver, their steps slowing, but their love never dimming. Every evening, they still sat on the porch together, holding hands and watching the sunset, counting their blessings and remembering how it all began. Beatrice never forgot the woman she had been when she first arrived at the ranch, broken and terrified and clinging to hope by her fingernails. But that woman felt like someone from another lifetime, someone she had been in a dream. The real Beatrice, the true Beatrice, was the woman she had become here in this place, with this man and this family. She had walked 563 miles to escape her past. And she had found a future more beautiful than any she could have imagined. She had found home. She had found love. She had found herself. And when, many years later, Benjamin and Beatrice were laid to rest side by side in the small cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch, their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered to remember them. They told stories about the lonely rancher who found a woman praying in his chapel and fell in love with her courage and strength. They told stories about the woman who walked 3 states to escape her past and found a future full of hope. The Broken J Ranch continued for generations, a testament to the love story that had built it. And in the chapel, the plaque still hung. Here, 2 broken hearts found healing in each other. It was a reminder that sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to the best moments. That sometimes we have to lose everything before we can find what truly matters. That love, real love, can heal even the deepest wounds. Beatrice had walked away from death and found life. She had run from cruelty and found kindness. She had fled from a man who called control love, and found a man who knew that real love meant freedom. And in the end, that made all the difference. Their legacy lived on in their children and their children's children, in the ranch they had built, in the community they had helped shape, and in the chapel where it all began. The story of the lonely rancher and the runaway wife became legend in Wyoming territory, told and retold around firesides and dinner tables. A reminder that hope exists even in the darkest times, and that love can conquer even the greatest fears. Benjamin had given Beatrice safety when she had none, love when she thought she was unlovable, and a family when she was utterly alone. Beatrice had given Benjamin purpose when he was drowning in grief, joy when he had forgotten what happiness felt like, and a reason to believe in tomorrow. Together, they had built something beautiful and lasting. Together, they had proven that broken things can be mended, that wounded hearts can heal, and that happy endings are possible even after the darkest beginnings. Their story was not just about survival or escape. It was about transformation, about 2 people who found each other at exactly the right moment, and who chose to build a life together based on respect, trust, and genuine love. It was about the healing power of kindness, the strength that comes from vulnerability, and the courage it takes to believe in love again after it has hurt you. In the end, Beatrice's journey from St. Louis to Wyoming was not just a physical journey across 3 states. It was a journey from despair to hope, from fear to courage, from brokenness to wholeness. And Benjamin's journey was not just from loneliness to companionship, but from grief to joy, from merely surviving to truly living. They had both been lost when they found each other. And together, they had found their way home. The ranch continued to thrive for decades, a living monument to their love story. The chapel remained standing, a place of prayer and reflection for generations of the Jameson family. And every fall, when the leaves turned gold and the air grew crisp, the family would gather at the ranch to celebrate the anniversary of the day Beatrice first arrived, the day that changed everything. They would tell the children the story of how great-grandma Beatrice walked all the way from Missouri, how great-grandpa Benjamin found her in the chapel and knew immediately that she was meant to be part of his life. They would talk about courage and perseverance, about standing up for what is right even when the law is wrong, about the power of love to overcome any obstacle. And the children would listen, wide-eyed and entranced, and they would understand that they came from strength, from survival, from love that conquered all. They would learn that family is not just about blood, but about choosing to stand by each other no matter what. They would grow up knowing that they were part of something bigger than themselves, a legacy of love that began with two broken people who found healing in each other. The sun set over the Broken J Ranch, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, just as it had done for decades. The cattle grazed peacefully in the pastures. The wind whispered through the cottonwoods. And in the chapel on the hill, the plaque still gleamed in the fading light. Here, two broken hearts found healing in each other. It was a simple statement, but it contained a world of truth. Benjamin and Beatrice had found each other when they both needed it most. They had built a life together based on mutual respect and genuine love. They had raised a family, built a ranch, and created a legacy that would endure for generations. And it all started on a September morning in 1872, when a lonely rancher opened the door to his chapel and found a woman praying inside. A woman who had walked 3 states to escape her past and who would, in that moment, find her future. Their love story was not perfect or easy. It was messy and complicated and hard-won. But it was real, and it was theirs, and it was beautiful, and in the end, that was all that mattered.